There's an amazing mix of humility and awe when you see someone doing something at a really high level. I've been on a run before, pretty happy with my time, only to see Olympic marathon star Jess Stenson bolt past me on what she called an easy 20k. Then there was the time I was overtaken climbing Mount Kinabalu by a little old lady in Adidas slides carrying a hot water system on her back. My name is Michael Murphy and this is episode 14 of Vacilando. Today I'm joined again by Principal of Uranley Primary School, Jess Chesterfield. How are you?
Oh, busy, flustered, tired.
What's going on at Uranley?
No, just a lot all the time. The main busy and tired this week is I'm actually teaching class 3 days a week this week.
Jess is taking 3 classes because when something like this happens and a teacher goes on leave for a period, it's all hands on deck. The thing is, there aren't many hands.
And usually David and I would split the load, but he is having his first holiday in 8 years. So he is in Europe right now.
And won't come back. How insensitive.
So, yeah, I could get a casual teacher 2 days a week. So I'm in class.
This is kind of wild. So something happens and you're kind of the first line.
Yeah, well, normally I'm lucky enough. David kind of takes a lot of first line, but yeah, with this 4 weeks, it's me. Fortunately, 2 weeks of that is the holidays. But the last couple of weeks as well, our casual teacher for her own reason is only available a couple of days. So David and I have been sharing the teaching load on the class for the last 3 weeks unexpectedly. So week 7 to 10 of term, while also doing all the HR of that. And the teacher's not returning to the classroom next term. So also interviewing for a new teacher. My instrumental teacher's on long service leave next term, so interviewing for that. And our external strategic facilitator sessions are next week.
Okay, there's a lot to us to work through here. So you've got
and that's just the immediate logistical putting bodies in classroom sides.
Yeah, okay. So you've got 4 staff, is that right?
I've got more, but my core classroom staff, I have 3 classroom teachers. I have David 3 days a week, and he is learning enhancement / support for me a lot of the time. So I guess a semi-middle leader position every now and then. And then I have 2 teacher aides that are also in our OSH as well. So they split across that. A Japanese teacher 1 day a week and an instrumental teacher 2 days a week.
Okay, so we're less
All
than
of us.
we're less than 10 in total.
Yes.
And
unless you count like our OSH educators, who we've got some casual OSH educators as well. But in our normal day, yes, my team is very little.
Okay.
We only have 17 in our entire school.
Okay. And let's say of those 10, how many are in some way, shape or form not available in the same way that you've been used to them being available?
2 out of the 4 on the ground.
Okay, so 50% of your school, 50% of your
50% of my teaching
face-to-face
staff is unexpectedly unavailable.
Okay, so that.
Oh well, one we knew wasn't going to be available. We knew David was going on holidays, but it's just unfortunate that it was unexpectedly exactly when the prep teacher needed to be on personal leave, and can't be helped.
Yeah.
But it just meant our backup system's not available to back up.
Because I'm realizing that the last school I worked at, that would have been 60 staff, and could you imagine having to replace 50%? Yeah, this is a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
And the thing is, with me being on class, it also means like our head of curriculum is unavailable because that's me, or our deputies are unavailable because that's me. So the moment I'm unavailable, there's, I guess, in that ratio, most of the leadership team is unavailable because we have myself, an OSH coordinator and a business manager 4 days a week. So it takes out the system a little bit.
So what are you learning then?
I didn't drink coffee before this job. Now I like to start my day with a very big coffee.
I can see a cup of tea there, so you still haven't
There's a
given into the
tea.
dark side.
Only one a day, but very big coffee this morning. I'm learning that in this form, it's not a sustainable role. And I'm incredibly surprised how long David sustained it. So 8 years, he was a teaching principal as well. So I just couldn't, at least not for me, not with a family or any semblance of work-life balance. Been a lot of late nights and things. So I'm glad it's a short-term scenario. I'm learning that taking time on weekends or things like that isn't a bonus, it's a requirement in order to keep going. You can see that dysregulation if you're not taking those times to do what needs to be done. I've already been able to prioritize. I'm having to learn probably to be more comfortable with no or not yet, or I'm going to have to get back to you next week. So probably a lot more of that. I usually try to solve things, as many as I can, practically on the spot when they're little things. Just because I am the person who answers it, I don't often have to check with the system and I can give those responses. But yeah, particularly over the last couple of weeks, if it's not urgent, it unfortunately will just have to wait till I get a moment to sit down at my computer and then I'll be able to get the answers for you.
So it's not sustainable, was kind of where you started, but then also talked about the ways in which you've made it sustainable through this around prioritizing.
For the period of time. Yeah. I feel a little bit like I'm sprinting a marathon at the moment, and that's not going to work. So it's managing the sprint, knowing that it's not going to be a marathon. If this was the job, if I was always teaching 3 days a week and being a small school principal, I wouldn't be able to do it. But knowing for now it's managing a hard situation, and then it will change.
Do you think, I mean, to use the sprinting a marathon analogy, how do you know how fast marathon runners actually run?
No, I am not a runner.
But it is preposterously fast.
Wow.
So
they don't have to pace themselves at all.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they
that sense.
I'm sure they pace themselves, but
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
The average kilometer split for a marathon runner is like 2 or 3 times faster than I can run.
Wow.
Like a 5K kind of run.
Yeah.
So over 5Ks, they would, at the midpoint of their marathon, they would like lap me twice. It's just, they're so fast. Which makes me think of this thought of running a marathon is, so sprinting a marathon is it actually true in the sense that to truly kind of be a marathon runner, you are effectively at sprint pace, because that's just the nature of running, of marathon running now, is that it's just that fast. And is that what principalship is now? Yeah. It's just that fast that it feels like you're sprinting, but actually you're just running a fast marathon.
I absolutely think it holds. And I mean, obviously it's my first year. I listened to the measure and the calm in how Luke speaks with great envy. Maybe his not having that same experience. But it's just a fast job. There's decisions, there's variables. And as much as you want to wait, not everything can be. You know, in a school like ours, if somebody calls in sick, I have to find that supply teacher before the day starts. It doesn't matter what else I have planned. And if I can't find them, I have to go in. So there is that constant speed of requirement. And I think it holds well in that I feel like you build a stamina over time in getting to the role and the different things that you do as teachers. Teaching itself is not a slow career or a light one. So I think in that way it holds, because I do imagine there's perhaps not that many professions who would look at the pace of our day and see that as their normal day.
It's just wild how intense it can be, right?
Yeah, I think intense is a good word. There's a lot of needing to measure against that intensity and hold that throughout the day and kind of recognize when that's rising, because each person that comes to you, I find as a principal, what they're bringing to you is very important, or they would have already solved it. And to them, you know, they're coming because it's urgent or it's a priority or they need assistance, and they're already feeling very strongly about it because what they've tried maybe hasn't worked, or support's required. And so for them, it might be one conversation in the day that is urgent and big need. For you, it could be one of 20 or 30 or more. So I think that intensity and how that multiplies as a person on the other end of it makes it probably a really good word. And you have to be careful that if 3 people come to you with something they feel strongly about, each person, you're starting that regulated and calm and in response to what they're saying, not the conversation before. So yeah, I think intensity might be a very good word for the role.
Have you always had that skill and sort of disposition to, when kind of resetting your, I guess, your regulation for each conversation you're having? Because, you know, some people, they just they bounce that energy, they just match whatever's coming to them. But then others who will just have that ability just to straight down. All right, let's talk about this. Is this a strength or a new strength?
I think it's a new context. So as a high school teacher, I absolutely had it for classes because they change every period. So just because year 9 something got under your skin doesn't mean you can be frustrated with year 7 something that's walking back into your room 3 minutes later. So I think I could do it really well there. Doing it with colleagues is a skill that's been worked on for a while, because I think particularly in teaching, it can get very insular and toxic as a profession because we feel so strongly about the kids. We feel so strongly about our circumstances. And really, we only have each other to vent to, apart from poor reluctant partners who never knew what they were getting into. And so it can be easy to catch what other people are feeling and that culture shifting, particularly if you're in a culture that's perhaps moved more to toxic or to concern. So I think I had to consciously, a few years ago when struggling with that feeling myself, learn how to do that with colleagues. But it was a lot easier with kids. We learn how to separate from vicarious trauma. We learn how to be the calm in their storm and how to regulate. And I guess it was clicking across to adults need that too. And then I think in this role, it's been leveling it up again to it's not just an important skill for myself, it's a responsibility in my role to be able to, again, be the calm in somebody's storm, to be their certainty, even if I don't have the answer, just to be somebody hears you, we will get to it. Let's figure out what the problem is first, and we'll kind of go from there. So I think it's had to grow. And I think it's had to probably happen at a stronger level at each kind of stage of that growth.
So you've clearly developed that over your leadership. I'm about to say leadership journey. No, I don't want to say that. You've clearly shown that growth over a period of different leadership roles that have led to your principalship. You would also identify that you haven't had a traditional principal apprenticeship.
No, not at all.
Do you miss not having one now, or do you think it wouldn't have done anything anyway?
I'm going to say no, not at all. Because my school is just so very uniquely itself. And I think so many places are, and you'll have lived experiences that help with it. But I couldn't imagine if I'd gone through a traditional apprenticeship structure that it would work here. If I had been used to having a team of HODs or a team of deputies or things like that, and then suddenly I'm the person stepping into class, I don't think it would have worked. What I have here that makes it so achievable is David. So my past principal is still here 3 days a week. And so I think having both a mentor who has been in your space, but also a respectful colleague who is supportive of how you choose to tackle it in your own way, that I think is probably the key to this working. And that probably is of better use to me than had I gone through that specific journey. Because while there would be skills, um, they would just have to be applied so very differently, I think.
'Cause my friend Nick, he said that when he was deputy principal, that was when he learnt how to be a principal, because the deputy principal is the one who actually runs the school. And you don't have a deputy principal, but as you said, you effectively are that person. And you haven't held the role of deputy before. So you haven't necessarily had those reins before. And most people have had that moment of, yep, I am running this show. But you think it's so, every context is so unique that actually doing that elsewhere maybe wouldn't have been as useful as it probably looked like it could have been.
I think maybe not here. Definitely if I were in maybe like a bigger state school, something like that, I could not have made that jump without all of that. But here, I have a team of experts around me already who know their job really, really well. So I have a lot of places I learn from and that are well established between, I'm a business manager, my OSH coordinator, my board. They know their stuff inside and out. But also, we don't necessarily have the same things that deputies in other schools would have that they need to have on their load. So there's a lot of things that were I doing it somewhere else, there would be more and more skills I would have needed to build. But here we don't have it. We don't have a huge co-curricular program, for example. So the logistics and things like that, I don't need to have understood that. We are very fortunate that behaviour is pretty much non-existent here in the negative capacity. So although that is an area of strength of me, there's aspects of the role that I don't need in that regard yet either. And I think there's just so much changing in the educational landscape that although it is hard, it's kind of working for me being a person learning it for the first time, because I don't assume I already know it. I sort of dig apart everything and have to ask questions about all of it and why it exists that way. And that has its own values. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't have got anything out of the other process. Absolutely, I'm sure I would have. I just think I kind of ended up where I should end up, how I should end up, and I happen to be the right fit for the very specific right job.
So let's look at your first year of this job then. When I first met you in this role, you were eagerly kind of looking forward to what was next. You'd told everyone that you were 3 different people with 3 different names.
Yeah.
We were learning what a puggle was and a dingo, and we knew what a dingo was, but that was where we started. And then all of a sudden, we're getting blown away, literally. But you had a calmness, an assertiveness, and a responsibility in that was just exceptional. Now we go into term 3 and we've got a different cyclone. I don't want to make light of the other cyclone, but
I think this is harder. The other one was 7 days.
Well, I was going to say, I didn't want to, I said, don't want to make light of it, but weigh them up.
It's harder for me logistically. No, obviously others were impacted much more, but for our school, we were closed, I believe it was about 10 days all up, but we weren't damaged. Our community was strong, all our people were still in the right places, and our parents and things stepped above and beyond. They were running study sessions in libraries and things like that. So this, I would say, is harder because this is trying to do business as usual with less than usual, whereas the cyclone hit and there was an understanding that business could not be as usual. So we changed it. We went with what was the priority and what needed to happen, and that was safety first, and kind of went from there. And essentially, school in a lot of ways paused and stopped. There is no pause in term 3.
Why not? Why couldn't this have been? Why can't this be that sort of rallying point for a community? This is a really hard thing for us to manage. Let's manage it together.
I think in that way, the team has beautifully, and our families have as well. They've been incredibly welcoming of new casualty teacher we're taking in. They've been having conversations with their children around, it's Mr. C today, it's Miss Jess tomorrow, doing messages and that kind of thing has been absolutely wonderful. Team on the ground, as with anybody in any school, people are covering duties left, right, and centre. They're helping make the logistics work. I had something where I had to come off class for a session so we did a multi-age session, and people brought it together. So they definitely are. But closing the school and going home for 3 weeks is probably the difference to the level of pause that we can take.
Could you not do it?
I don't think so, no. I think our little people need their consistency, their routine, their connection, their spaces. Our parents need to be able to do their employment.
That's fair. Yep, I can see that. I guess the response to this the real cyclone was it was just so dynamic in the sense that you're head of your college, your school council, you're head of your parents and friends. I think I'm getting the acronym wrong, but the Parents Association. Yep. Like they were rallying together in this different way. You were stepping in there. This other group was there. You're doing all these, weird and wild things. And then in this cyclone, everyone's super dynamic and stepping in, but there's a familiarity with that, which is like, well, yeah, the next person up just takes the job below. And I guess I was just wondering if there was something weird and wacky that could be looked at.
Possibly. I haven't found it yet, because we've got school musicals and all sorts of things in this time as well. But I think what does work really well is we tend to sit as a team. So between our teachers, between our TAs, we go, okay, this is what next week looks like. What do we need to know? What do we need to plan for? What are our priorities? How do we kind of shift and move that together? So I think that is in its own way quite wacky and wonderful, because a lot of the time it is just sort of an email and this is how it's going to work. And I like that we all bring together on that. But otherwise, I think our best thing is just we all know, for example, the routines for our little people down in that space. So we've been sitting down sharing and going, how do we keep that consistent? What are the parts that are their priorities to their day? They still settle the same way every morning and things like that. And then I guess within that dynamics, which are the parts that need to change or flow? So maybe this is not the exact variance of the science experiment that they were doing, but we're looking at our achievement standards. We're looking at the core and the point of learning. Let's go outside and do it at bush instead. So in that, yeah, we continue to remain dynamic, but that's not terribly unusual for Yarra and Lee. We are a bit out of the box as it is in general, or at least a bit out of the classroom.
And the bushland behind you suggests that is definitely true.
Absolutely.
So in term one, you had, I think, if I was to think about where your eyes were in term one, they were on the immediate, like that day, but you're also casting your eyes to the future as well. You were definitely going back and forth. In term two, you really had to lower the eyes on the immediacy of the moment with the cyclone, but also then looked much further in advance because you were looking at 2026. You were looking at all your implementation now. Where are your eyes today?
It depends on which moment of the day, I guess. We are, as I said, still doing strategic planning. Griffith is still moving off-site, and that is constantly changing what that could mean for us. This term's been prep interviews and all sorts of things as well, and staffing for next year, obviously. But then, yeah, I'm teaching class too. So I think that constant up and down continues, sometimes to a level of whiplash, which is, I guess, where the intentional goes, and you sort of go, okay, I do not have the mind to jump between right now. This needs to be the priority. And then at that time, I can sort of do the next chunk. But we're going as far as 2030 at the moment, while also trying to figure out what am I teaching exactly in my lesson structures tomorrow? And are my resources ready?
But how are you doing it? How are you going back and forth like that?
Hopefully effectively, she says
Not how well.
nervously.
How are you
No.
actually doing it?
Yeah, no, logistically. A lot of it is around scheduling and timetabling and knowing myself. I'm very routine based. So I know these are the times I'm on class. A lot of using my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it's not real. And it can't be done. The last few weeks, unfortunately, it has meant a fair bit of after school work. So fair few late nights, which is why those weekends have really become a priority to kind of reconnect with my girls and get all of that time. I'm very lucky to have a good support network at home with that. But at the moment, it is just scheduling and blocks of time. It's also constantly looking for opportunity. So, for example, we had our whole school rehearsal last Thursday. We didn't need every member of staff on site for our supervision ratios. So we did it in a 2-day split, a 2-part split. And we had one team tackling things in the morning while the others were supervising. And then we had a planning team in the afternoon. So trying to look constantly at where the opportunities are and how to use that time effectively. I've learned not to make the assumption that that time will always be there in the future as well. So I think there's a lot of, if this is a priority, let's fit it in and make it work. There's no point pausing or holding off because suddenly 8 weeks would have passed and you'll be looking back at it.
That's a really interesting idea because I think we often do that. We kick things down the road. I don't have the time today, or I've only got 5 minutes today. I mean, I did that 15 times already this week. Which is going, when I just get half an hour, then I'll do it. But but you're saying if you've got 25 minutes now, you may not get that 25 minutes again. So you better use it.
Or it's even learning a time frame. So I found if I go, yep, I need to have that chat, but I don't pick when I'm going to do it, that's when it gets forgotten. So it might be, I can't do that today, but at 3 o'clock when I know I've got an hour at my computer, that's the perfect time for it. Or looking and going, I have a slightly quieter day next Thursday. Let's book in that time for next Thursday. So I find it can't be a hypothetical time that I will circle back to that because it just doesn't hold. But I can learn to hold the space for now as a no, as long as I know when it will be a yes. That, and as said in the other interview, sticky notes. Lots and lots and lots of sticky notes. I'm on to about my 4th book this term of them.
So term 3 is definitely term of the sticky notes for all principals.
100%. If it's not written down, it's not staying. I'm learning. So I have to write it on the sticky notes that I have carry with me or have the conversation and then go, can you please email me those exact details straight away? And just little shifts like that. I used to be the person that had the conversation and then I'd send the email. Now realizing, although the other people are also very, very busy, they probably have a few less to send throughout the day or they're holding that information better than me at the moment. Can they send it to me?
Did you think you would be did you think that that's how you would be as a principal?
I've always loved a great diary and a yarn. So I definitely knew I would be a talker and an out and about. So those parts haven't surprised me. I didn't realize how much I would need to slow myself down and think on it. I thought there'd be a lot more, yep, there's the answer, so on we go. But there's so many moving parts all the time that you learn the lesson that even though you think you're on it in that moment, for example, if you're walking on duty and somebody asks you something, you think, oh, that's a straightforward answer. So many times the answer should be, let me get back to you this afternoon. Because as soon as you sit down, you remember there's 6 other conversations in the day. You go, that answer needs to be slightly different. So probably that part I wasn't expecting as much. How long I would just have to make these windows of time to stop and answer solidly and slowly.
So it's the right fit and still the right fit?
Yes, I think so. I hope so. I hope the community thinks so too. I love it.
Is it
crazy, but I love it.
Is it still fun?
Yes. Definitely. Depends on the time of day. Every now and then, the little heart rate monitor on the watch might think I'm exercising when I'm not and remind me to take a breath. But it's definitely still fun. It's dynamic, it's challenging, it's changing. But in my circumstance, having the team that I do, it's also beautiful. You get to actually just see it. You get to see the reality of what you're doing and the growth. So when you do end up looking down and your head's in the weeds and you take that breath to kind of look up at the sky, it's a pretty beautiful view.
Well, what's going to be different this time next year?
Oh gosh, I feel like that's four versions of me away yet, for me to know. I mean, in our school, hopefully certainty around the transition, around expansion, around exactly what our future can look like. If not the definite logistical decisions, just the big picture stuff, so that we can kind of figure it out in a more informed way. I think that would be really significant for our community. And then it's a lot of continuation of what we've started this year. Nothing we've rolled out has been intended to be a quick fix. As you know, we moved to a new learning management system. So just every time we pick one little area of that, we're going to use and keep growing. And that's going to take a couple of years to learn all the parts. We have our literacy. We moved harder into promoting literacy development, PLD, which we had before. So things like learning how to data track, but then going forward now, what does it mean? What's it look like for our pedagogy? So I don't think it'll be about any great shifts or, viva la revolution. I think it's just about the slow and steady, good quality work and sticking to the already very ambitious focus areas we picked for ourselves and making sure that they just keep rolling in a way that everybody can kind of make them work and have their own balance as well. Because while I know my burnout markers and warnings and I'm caring for myself, we also have a responsibility to staff that we don't put out things that aren't sustainable for them either.
So those are all sort of changes in the way the school's operating and what's going on in the school. But the biggest intensities that you're kind of feeling in the day-to-day are going to be there next year because someone's going to get sick, someone's going to be on leave, someone's going to do that. So what's going to be different next year? Or is it just not?
Who knows? Maybe it's not. I mean, I hope it will be in the sense that I feel like every time something like this happens, you find something in your system and a solution for next time it comes through. We haven't had a relief teacher on our books regularly before, just because we don't need them very often as a very small school. We have somebody wonderful who it fits well for them now. Yeah, I don't. Oh gosh, you've got me thinking. I don't know. I suspect to a level they'll be the same because term 3 is always chaotic. In over a decade of schools, that hasn't changed. Maybe what that chaos looks like or what that tiredness looks like changes. But I don't think that term 3 challenge has ever changed. I guess for me, I'll have the confidence of knowing I've done it all before in this version. And I think with that comes a certain, again, peace and confidence, in capacity to handle it. And like anything, hopefully it gets a little bit easier when you've done it before and you have something to pull from and a bit of a foundation to build upon. And hopefully I might actually have school holidays this time next year. Maybe I might take a few days off, which isn't working through these particular holidays. So that would be a lovely change for next holidays, I think.
Because one of your survival strategies, not to be too strong on it, is the weekends, right? Spending time with your girls, with your family, and you need to take that time because otherwise you wouldn't be able to reset and the heart rate monitor would be out of control. So is it a case of, term 3 is term 3. I just need to make sure I rest a bit more during the mid-year break and then schedule term 3 holidays?
I think so. I think knowing what you're coming for, and I'm already learning principalship is, and again, not that different to teaching in this way, but it's something that very easily encroaches on a lot of your life. Because so many things are priorities, it's easy to think I'll spend 20 more minutes tackling this thing, or it doesn't matter if I sit down and work on my computer for a couple hours this Sunday, and things like that. So I think knowing that boundary has to stay is important. and managing that accordingly so that there are those times and having that something to look forward to where you go. It might only be 3 or 4 days off, nothing crazy, but knowing that for that time you will stop working and you will go and you will be, and everything will be okay if you do. And I think that's probably the hardest part as a principal, maybe particularly a small one where you don't necessarily have huge teams underneath you. It can be very easy to think, well, if I stop, what if something happens? Who's going to handle it? And it's remembering that you've got plenty of people who can handle it and it will be okay.
Even though there's only 17, there's still plenty of people.
It's still more than just one person. And I think that's an important reminder. Yeah.
Is that written on a sticky note somewhere that you just refer back to?
That I'm just one person? No, it's not. Maybe it should be. Yeah, at the moment, I don't have a particular sticky note, I think, that keeps me going. I haven't needed one, and maybe that's a good sign too.
I think it probably is, but it reminded me of, when I speak to Luke, he's got his EA who I remember she scheduled in some time to speak to some students. And I said to Luke, you realize that she didn't do that for the kids, she did that for you. And I spoke to Phil Cummins a couple of weeks ago, and he said, look, his EA, Eva, she would come in for like little pep talks between meetings with students or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I think of Julie has that EA who is sort of scheduling different things at different times, and she's scheduling joy excursions throughout the school. Do you have that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I still teach art. So I have my 3 hours a week teaching art to students and staying connected and sharing that with them, which I love. I definitely make sure I'm out of my office because it's a separate building and up around the grounds multiple times a day. So I'm really conscious of when I'm starting to feel that computer presence. And I go up and reconnect with them. I do the thing that everybody else has said not to do. I do the morning gate and the afternoon gate. I do that at least once a day, one of them, because I like that touch point and it makes me happy. And they get all these great smiles, and it's a beautiful chance to see them. But what I probably have similar to those stories of EAs as well is I have a team who does it for me. I got in a bit of trouble because I was surviving off chocolate for a brief period. Again, not a new thing in schools, but about 2 weeks ago, I got roused on by my OSH coordinator and my business manager, lovingly, Marie and Sal. And ever since, Marie makes me breakfast every morning, and it appears on that morning duty, delivered by a student or another staff member. And I've noticed all our OSH staff in the afternoon, which Marie doesn't work, pop something aside on the afternoon tea for me as well. And if I'm not up by a certain time, I'll often get a text to say, are you having a toastie? Are you having garlic bread? So I do have other people kind of making those points of joy or self-care. And definitely as well, again, David's my other one that will come in, and when it's been a big day or things are going on, I get the how are you question kind of at the end of the day. So I think in the day-to-day, I'm very, very lucky, and I get a lot of moments for joy. And very rarely is there a whole day in which it's intensity without joy.
I would look at your school and say, you don't have a deputy, you don't have an EA, you don't have, and I can easily point at things you don't have. But what you've got is people doing elements of each of those roles.
Absolutely. What I've got is pretty rare. I've got a lot of people that not only are doing elements of it, but because we're little, they know you. There is no hiding when you're anxious. There's no hiding when you're tired. People know you. They're looking out for each other, and they check in. If I'm walking around looking a bit spacey because I've got multiple things on my mind, I'll have 3 or 4 people. But you okay? Do you need anything? Anything you want? And it's a level that would easily be ignored in a bigger school, not from lack of caring, just lack of notice or knowing. So there can be a lot of focus on the structures we're missing, but Yeah, you're right. We have a lot of people in a lot of places with a lot of care across the board. So culture and community wise, I'm doing pretty much in the surplus column there.
Is there any risk that if anyone needs to be replaced, because, as you say, David goes away, but each time you speak of the role that David does, you say it's David. It's not,
Yeah.
I've got because what's his official role? He's learning
Well, we're
support
still
3 days a
figuring
week.
it out as part of why it's David. So he is our learning enhancement coordinator. But part of this year, because we have a very unique transition, not a lot of principals stay and want to teach and be on the class and are so supportive and humble of whoever is coming in. So we've been really honest all along. Let's try what we think will work this year and define the role across the year. And that's still sort of work that we're doing. So hence David is David, rather than a particular role. We have a bit of a joke with him going on his holiday that his title is my emotional support David. Really, it's just having people wherever we kind of need them, however we need to fit. To answer your question, when anybody leaves our community, it is very hard to replace. And it is very hard to find the right fit. We will take a lot of time for it. One of our current OSH educators, who is a TA and also assistant director of our OSH, it took 2 years to find the right person for that position. So it is a very unique space to fill. It's not easy to kind of roll somebody in, but I guess that's what happens. Sometimes when people end up across those bands, it can become a little bit irreplaceable. And we kind of have to flex with whoever comes in next and where their strengths are. And those roles kind of change and move with those people if they need to.
Is that a worry that you've got looking at potential expansion and things like that as well?
I think in a lot of core areas, there has been a level of legacy planning. Like we're a very multi-generational staff. So we have all different ages across the board and all different experiences. And there are people, for example, to IC and OSH that could be there and need to step up if it happens. I'm probably the one hardest for somebody to step up to in the moment, which is why it is great having David, because obviously it's a big leap from classroom teacher to jump through, as I know. But it's definitely what we keep in mind. And of course, as we expand, I think those levels are something we would need to look at adding. Just because although it is amazing having people in all these spaces, there's only so much each person can carry. And so as the load increases, the people carrying it needs to increase.
I'm going to give you 2 opportunities to travel through time.
Okay.
You can go back to the very start of this year and also to 12 months from now.
Okay.
So in those 2 times, what would you have told yourself? If you can go back, what would you say to Jess starting the year? And what do you think you would tell Jess in 12 months?
I think Jess starting the year would need to be told the same thing Jess always needs to be told, which is slow down and breathe. Not everybody lives in your brain or at your pace. And that's been a lifelong lesson. Sometimes in excitement, I can do too much, too big, too fast. And then other people are, overwhelmed by that. So learning that, yes, it was great. I knew what I wanted to do for the next 3 or 5 years with our team and how we could grow that together. I probably didn't need to tell everybody that immediately, though, because that made it seem like a lot bigger than it was. And Jess, from now, hopefully, I'll just be able to sort of say, it was all worth it. You've continued to grow. Keep going.
Thanks to Jess Chesterfield for taking us on her marathon today. Don't forget to search for Dear Stardust where you get your podcasts. My name's Michael Murphy, and this has been episode 14 of Vacilando.